Burning Spear, now 81, is more than a reggae legend. He's a living testament to the roots of the genre, and recently he dropped a bombshell. There were several reggae icons he openly admitted he couldn't stand. That's right, not everyone got along in that tight-knit world of Rastafari beats and thunderous bass. In this video, we'll look at Burning Spear's early career, the tensions behind the scenes, and what shaped his legacy. Whether you're a die-hard reggae fan or just curious, you're in for some real talk. Early life and musical roots. Winston Rodney was born on March 1st, 1945, in St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica, a rural corner of the island that also claims Bob Marley and Marcus Garvey as natives. As he grew up, Winston soaked up the sounds coming through the radio: soul, R&B, and jazz from U.S. stations floated across the Caribbean airwaves, seeping into his bones. At the same time, he was deeply influenced by Marcus Garvey's philosophy of black unity, self-reliance, and cultural pride. Life in St. Ann was humble. Young Winston did all kinds of jobs. He worked odd day jobs, listened to village elders, and spent time thinking about his heritage. Over time, Garvey's message became a major influence on him, not just politically, but spiritually and culturally. For Rodney, music wasn't just entertainment. It was a way to carry forward a purpose. There was a turning point: Bob Marley. One day, Winston ran into Marley while Marley was gardening and carrying farming tools. They connected man to man over shared roots and shared dreams. Winston told Marley he wanted to make music. Marley didn't laugh him off. Instead, he pointed him to Kingston Studio One, run by the legendary Clement Coxsone Dodd. That suggestion changed everything. In 1969, Rodney made the move to Kingston with his singing partner, Rupert Willington. He auditioned at Studio One, and he made it in. Around that time, he formed a trio with Willington and Delroy Hines. That crew recorded their first songs together, one of them being Door Peep, a track that would mark the beginning of Rodney's serious musical journey. Rodney also adopted a name with deep resonance: Burning Spear. He took it from Jomo Kenyatta, Kenya's nationalist leader, whose name means burning spear in his native language. That name wasn't just cool, it carried weight. It told you that Rodney wasn't just in this for the charts or the parties. He was carrying a torch. Musically, his early sound was rooted in ritual and identity. He layered hypnotic chanting, drums inspired by the Rasta Nyabingi tradition, and melodies that echoed his African roots. His lyrics talked about resilience, unity, and justice. This wasn't light pop reggae, this was message music. Through his songs, he offered listeners more than rhythm. He offered a way to connect with something deeper. Even early on, people picked up on his seriousness. Critics called him a kind of Jamaican griot, a storyteller and a spiritual teacher. He wasn't singing just to entertain, he was teaching. He used his voice to uplift, to warn, and to heal. In his own reflections later in life, Rodney said that music came from inside him. He didn't feel like he was learning how to sing or write. It was part of him already. And by combining the lessons from Garvey, the encouragement from Marley, and the opportunity at Studio One, he was able to carve out a space in reggae that was uniquely his. By the time Burning Spear was fully in the game, he represented more than a musician. He was a messenger. He was a teacher. And he was starting to build a legacy that would ripple through reggae and beyond. Rise to stardom. Burning Spear's journey into the big leagues didn't happen overnight. After working with Studio One's Clement Coxsone Dodd, things started to shift. His early singles, especially Door Peep Shall Not Enter, laid the groundwork, but it was his debut album, released on Studio One, that began to turn heads. The album featured his hypnotic chanting, powerful bass lines, and a sound that felt both spiritual and politically pointed. Shortly after, he released a second Studio One album, Rocking Time. This record leaned even deeper into his roots and message-driven style. It wasn't about making radio hits. It was about singing what he believed. The raw cosmic feel of Rocking Time reflected his commitment to conscious reggae over commercial appeal. Then came a turning point: his work with producer Jack Ruby. Burning Spear and Ruby connected in the mid-70s, and together they created what many consider his masterpiece, Marcus Garvey. This album was named in honor of the Pan-African leader Marcus Garvey, whose teachings deeply influenced Rodney's own philosophy. Spears' lyrics on the album don't just groove, they teach. Songs like Slavery Days and Marcus Garvey called out injustice, uplifted the marginalized, and spoke to a wider diaspora about hope, identity, and resistance. The album was initially for a sound system, but broke out into something much bigger. With Marcus Garvey came more attention. Island Records stepped in, remixing it for wider release, though not without controversy. Many diehard fans and Spear himself felt the remix diluted some of the original's atmospheric power. That tension pushed Rodney to take more control over his music. Around that time, he started his own label, Burning Music, so he could keep his sound authentic and his message pure. He didn't stop there. His follow-up with Ruby, Man in the Hills, took a more introspective turn. Rather than focusing solely on political themes, this album reflected his roots, literally. The songs evoked rural life and memories of his hometown in St. Ann's Bay. There's a calmness, a wisdom in tracks that feel like reflections under a Jamaican sky. But the weight of his message doesn't disappear. Even in quiet moments, Burning Spear drops truth bombs. By the late 70s, Burning Spear was becoming a name not just in Jamaica, but beyond. His live performances gained traction. In London, he played a landmark show backed by the British reggae band Aswad. It was the kind of event that signals you've arrived. From the Studio One days to international stages, he went from recording under Dodd to headlining shows with his own band. A big part of his rise was his refusal to compromise. He didn't water down his lyrics, and he didn't chase mainstream trends. His sound stayed rooted in his philosophy: African unity, self-reliance, spiritual resistance. But he also grew strategically. By building the Burning Music label, he set himself up not just as an artist, but as a creator with ownership. In interviews later, Rodney reflected on how each stage of his rise felt like a step toward fulfilling his purpose. He wasn't just building a career, he was building a legacy. His early days at Studio One taught him discipline. His time with Ruby sharpened his voice, and starting his own label gave him freedom. So, by the mid-70s, Burning Spear wasn't just a reggae singer. He was a leader, a voice for change, an artist whose rise was as much about vision as it was about talent. And that foundation set the stage for those icons he couldn't stand, revelations years later. Reggae scene in his era. To understand Burning Spear's career, you have to step back and look at the reggae scene in the 1960s and 1970s. Jamaica was a small island with a big sound. Reggae had evolved from ska and rocksteady, and the music was booming. The streets of Kingston pulsed with sound systems blasting everything from early ska hits to socially conscious tunes. For young artists like Winston Rodney, the environment was both inspiring and competitive. Competition was everywhere. Studio One, led by Clement Dodd, was producing countless artists who all wanted a piece of the spotlight. Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer were already making waves. There was pressure to perform, but there was also opportunity. Artists could collaborate, learn from each other, and carve out unique sounds. For Burning Spear, this meant staying true to his message while navigating a world full of big personalities. Producers played a huge role in shaping careers. Jack Ruby, Lee Scratch Perry, and Coxsone Dodd all had reputations for spotting talent and pushing artists to the edge. But the producer-artist relationship could be tricky. Many disagreements and creative tensions arose behind the scenes. Studio time was limited, expectations were high, and the industry was rapidly commercializing. For someone like Burning Spear, whose music carried deep spiritual and political messages, this could be a delicate balance. Touring and live performances added another layer. Sound systems weren't just for fun, they were the lifeblood of Jamaican music culture. Artists would travel to perform in dance halls or on overseas tours, where fans expected electrifying shows. Rivalries often followed. Competing for attention, radio play, and album sales sometimes created friction between artists. On the other hand, these rivalries could push creativity. Fans loved a bit of drama, and the competition drove some of the most memorable music of the era. The social and political climate influenced the music too. Jamaica in the 1970s faced economic hardship, political unrest, and social tensions. Reggae artists often became voices for the people. Songs weren't just entertainment, they were statements. Burning Spear's peers, including Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, used music as a form of protest. For Spear, the message had to be authentic and rooted in his spiritual beliefs. That sometimes set him apart from others, both musically and personally. Despite the challenges, the reggae community was tightly knit. Artists shared studio space, exchanged ideas, and sometimes recorded together. But close quarters also meant personalities clashed. For Burning Spear, loyalty, respect, and shared vision were key. Disagreements weren't uncommon, and while some were minor, others became lasting tensions. It's in this environment of creativity, competition, and high stakes that the stories of the artists he couldn't stand begin to make sense. In short, the reggae scene in his era was a mix of opportunity and friction. For fans, it was a golden age of rhythm, poetry, and passion. For artists like Burning Spear, it was a testing ground for talent, patience, and principles. It set the stage for legendary recordings, iconic tours, and a few personal conflicts that would make for some revealing stories decades later. The conflicts begin. Even in a world full of rhythm, bass, and spiritual message, not everyone got along in the reggae scene. Burning Spear was known for his deep devotion to his craft and his uncompromising approach to music. He had a clear vision for what roots reggae should sound like, and that sometimes put him at odds with other artists. The tensions often started small, with disagreements over studio time, creative decisions, or even interpretations of Rastafarian philosophy. But in a scene where personalities were as strong as the music, small sparks could easily ignite. Early in his career, Burning Spear crossed paths with several major names in reggae who were also finding their place in the industry. Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer were all emerging talents with growing influence, and their paths naturally intersected with Spear's. While there was mutual respect for musical skill, differences in style and approach sometimes led to friction. For Spear, the spiritual and educational weight of his lyrics mattered more than commercial success, which occasionally clashed with the priorities of others chasing mainstream attention. Producers and studio politics added another layer of tension. Studio One, Jack Ruby's Yard, and other production hubs were competitive environments where access to equipment and recording time could mean the difference between a hit and a miss. Artists often jockeyed for position, trying to get the best slots or producers' attention. Spear's insistence on perfecting his sound could be misunderstood as stubbornness or arrogance. It created moments where even friendly collaborators felt the heat of competition. Live performances could amplify conflicts. Sound system culture thrived on rivalry, and artists were constantly aware of who was drawing the largest crowds or winning the loudest cheers. Spear's early tours sometimes put him on stage against artists with very different approaches to music and showmanship. Differences in personality, energy, and philosophy occasionally led to arguments behind the scenes. While fans saw the music as celebratory, artists experienced the intensity of high expectations and ego clashes firsthand. Some conflicts were ideological. Spear's dedication to Rastafarian principles was central to his identity. If fellow artists or collaborators did not share the same seriousness about spiritual messages or African unity, tensions arose. Discussions about song content, lyrical focus, and cultural accuracy sometimes became heated debates. Spear's uncompromising standards, while earning him respect, also created friction with artists who had a more commercial or lighthearted approach. Even within his own circle, differences in opinion about the music and direction of reggae occasionally caused disagreements. Musicians, producers, and collaborators each had their own vision for the genre's future. Spear's insistence on authenticity sometimes meant walking away from projects or partnerships that did not align with his values. That decisiveness earned him admiration, but it also created stories of rivalries and unresolved tensions that lasted decades. Ultimately, the reggae scene of that era was a high-energy, high-stakes world where musical passion, personal pride, and spiritual beliefs collided. For Burning Spear, these conflicts were part of the journey. They tested his patience, sharpened his focus, and reinforced his commitment to his own musical path. The sparks that flew in the studios, on the stages, and during heated discussions set the stage for the iconic revelations he would make later, about which reggae legends he simply could not stand. These early conflicts reveal that even in a genre that celebrates love, unity, and rhythm, human ego and passion are unavoidable. The icons. He couldn't stand. When people hear the phrase "icons burning Spear couldn't stand," it's easy to imagine petty squabbles or messy drama. In reality, most of Spear's tensions were about bigger principles: how reggae was treated, how messages were conveyed, and how the industry sometimes exploited artists. His critiques weren't about personalities as much as they were about professionalism, artistic integrity, and staying true to the roots of the music. One of the biggest sources of friction for Spear was how some reggae artists and record labels treated the music itself. He often spoke out about how many of his peers were exploited, with labels profiting from their work without respecting the spiritual or cultural meaning behind it. Spear believed strongly that roots reggae was more than entertainment. It was a medium to educate, uplift, and connect listeners to their history and identity. When he saw others prioritizing commercial success over message, tensions naturally emerged. His relationships with fellow reggae legends were nuanced. Spear respected talents like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and others who helped bring Jamaican music to the global stage. But respect did not mean he blindly agreed with every decision or approach. He valued authenticity above all else, and he was willing to call out practices or choices that compromised the depth of the music. His critiques often focused on career choices or the direction of reggae itself, rather than personal dislike. A significant area of tension came from differing priorities. While some artists were chasing chart hits or short-term fame, Spear remained focused on creating music with lasting cultural and spiritual impact. He often chose artistic integrity over commercial gain, which sometimes put him at odds with those who had different goals. His decisions to walk away from projects or avoid collaborations that didn't align with his values only added to perceptions of him being selective, serious, or hard to work with. Spear also expressed disappointment in how some artists drifted from Rastafarian principles and Pan-African messages. He believed these values were central to the power of reggae. When others neglected the philosophical or spiritual core of the music, he voiced concerns, sometimes publicly. Yet, he rarely framed it as a personal attack. He approached it more as a lesson in staying true to the culture that had shaped him. Critiques extended to the business side of the industry too. He fought for artist ownership and creative control, challenging record labels and managers when decisions threatened the integrity of his music. This insistence on autonomy occasionally led to conflicts, but Spear saw it as necessary to protect his legacy and the authenticity of roots reggae. So, when we talk about the icons he couldn't stand, it's not gossip. It's about someone who refused to compromise his principles, called it out when things went wrong, and remained committed to the cultural and spiritual purpose of his work. For Burning Spear, standing up for these ideals was more important than avoiding confrontation, and it defined both his career and the stories he would later tell about the reggae world. Behind-the-scenes stories. Burning Spear's career is full of moments that never made it to the album covers or magazine spreads. Behind the scenes, the reggae world was a mix of creativity, tension, and unpredictability. And Spear's experiences reveal the realities of being a serious artist in a high-pressure environment. These stories are less about celebrity gossip, and more about what it takes to preserve integrity in an industry built on both artistry and commerce. One recurring theme was studio tension. Recording sessions were intense, especially in places like Studio One, or with producer Jack Ruby. Equipment could be limited, schedules were tight, and expectations were high. Spear's perfectionism sometimes clashed with other artists or engineers who wanted faster results or a more commercial sound. These conflicts weren't personal. They were born out of differing priorities. Spear wanted music that carried weight and meaning, while some others were focused on speed or marketability. Touring was another source of behind-the-scenes drama. Spear toured internationally while maintaining his commitment to roots reggae. Touring in the 1970s and 1980s was physically demanding. Long flights, late-night gigs, and sound system expectations meant that energy levels were constantly tested. He sometimes had disagreements with fellow musicians over set lists, arrangements, or performance style. Spear's goal was consistency. He wanted every audience to experience music that was authentic and powerful. That level of dedication sometimes led to friction, but it also ensured legendary live performances. Collaboration stories also shed light on tensions. Spear worked with countless musicians, many of whom were brilliant in their own right. But coordinating creative input is never simple. Musicians had different ideas about instrumentation, tempo, or lyrical emphasis. Spear's insistence on cultural and spiritual authenticity meant he was often the final decision-maker, which occasionally caused disagreements. His choices, however, helped define the signature sound that fans still associate with Burning Spear today. There were also humorous incidents that didn't make the press. Spear's focus sometimes made him oblivious to the chaos around him. From lost instruments to late arrivals, unpredictable studio antics, and even impromptu sound system battles, he often found himself navigating situations with patience and wit. These moments showed a different side of the artist, human, approachable, and sometimes amused by the drama that he managed to rise above. Finally, his behind-the-scenes experiences often reinforced his philosophy of musical and personal discipline. Spear believed that music was a vehicle for teaching, healing, and connecting with listeners. Every disagreement or challenge was a lesson in patience, focus, and commitment. These stories reveal the effort behind the legend and why he became known not just for his albums, but for his steadfast approach to artistry. Taken together, these behind-the-scenes experiences offer insight into the world Burning Spear inhabited. They show that while the stage and studio lights highlight the music, the unseen challenges, clashes, and moments of tension played a huge role in shaping him as an artist. By staying true to his values, Spear managed to navigate the complex, sometimes volatile world of reggae while creating timeless music. These stories explain why he was selective about collaborations and why his critiques of certain icons made sense in context. His legacy is as much about perseverance and principle as it is about talent and rhythm. Later, career and legacy. Burning Spear's later career shows how an artist can remain relevant while staying true to their principles. In the decades following his initial rise, he continued to produce albums that honored his roots, emphasized cultural and spiritual messages, and maintained the hypnotic rhythm fans had come to love. Unlike many artists who compromise style for commercial success, Spear kept the focus on message and authenticity, a decision that earned him respect across generations of reggae listeners. One hallmark of his later career was the consistency of his releases. Albums like Rasta Business and Jah Is Real reinforced his commitment to socially conscious reggae, while experimenting with slightly modern production techniques. He also toured extensively, performing at festivals around the world. Spear's live shows became legendary for their intensity and spirituality. Fans didn't just hear music, they felt it. Even decades into his career, he could still command a stage, deliver stirring performances, and engage audiences with the same energy as he did in the 1970s. Burning Spear also became a mentor figure. Younger reggae artists frequently cite him as an influence, not just for his music, but for his dedication to message-driven work. He stressed discipline, understanding of history, and respect for the craft. His approach inspired emerging artists to think critically about their own music, encouraging them to create songs that were more than entertainment. Through workshops, interviews, and behind-the-scenes guidance, Spear passed on wisdom that extended beyond the studio. His legacy also includes a focus on ownership and autonomy. Early battles with producers and labels taught him the importance of controlling his work. As a result, Spear's catalog remained under his supervision, allowing him to make decisions about reissues, live recordings, and compilations without compromising his vision. This control became a model for other artists who wanted to preserve the integrity of their music while navigating an increasingly globalized industry. Spear's contributions were recognized with numerous awards, including Grammy nominations and wins, affirming his status as a key figure in reggae history. But accolades were never the primary motivator. For Spear, recognition was meaningful only insofar as it validated the continued relevance of roots reggae. His impact was felt not just in the charts, but in the hearts and minds of fans who found empowerment, education, and cultural pride in his music. Later interviews and retrospectives highlight how Spear views his own journey. He emphasizes persistence, spiritual grounding, and an unwavering commitment to principles. He often reflects on the balance between music and message, explaining that maintaining integrity in an industry that prioritizes profit is challenging yet necessary. These reflections make clear why his critiques of other artists and industry practices carry weight. They come from decades of experience navigating challenges while staying true to his vision. Ultimately, Burning Spear's later career solidified his place as a legend. He remains a living testament to the power of authenticity, cultural pride, and spiritual dedication in reggae. His influence extends across generations, inspiring artists, fans, and cultural advocates alike. While he never shied away from criticizing missteps in the industry, he also led by example, showing that longevity and impact are possible when art and message are inseparable. Final reflections. Looking back on Burning Spear's career, one thing becomes clear. His story is about more than albums, hits, or tours. It's about consistency, principles, and a dedication to a cultural and spiritual message that has endured for decades. From his early days in St. Ann's Bay to international stages, Spear remains steadfast in his commitment to reggae as a vehicle for education, empowerment, and healing. His legacy is defined by the principles he upheld. Artistic integrity was non-negotiable, whether he was recording in a small Jamaican studio or performing for thousands overseas. He understood that music carries power, and he used that power responsibly, blending rhythm, poetry, and philosophy in ways that resonated with listeners across generations. Even when confronted with conflicts, rivalries, or industry pressures, Spear prioritized authenticity over convenience. Another cornerstone of his reflections is the importance of the message. For Burning Spear, reggae was never just entertainment. It was a tool to inspire pride in African heritage, advocate for justice, and strengthen community bonds. His critiques of peers or industry practices were never about personal vendettas. Instead, they were guided by a commitment to preserving the integrity and spiritual weight of the music he loved. Spear's career also emphasizes resilience. He navigated changing musical trends, industry politics, and international pressures without compromising his principles. Where others might have pursued fame or commercial appeal at the cost of message, Spear held firm. His decisions to manage his catalog, maintain control over his work, and mentor emerging artists illustrate a long-term vision that extends beyond the charts or accolades. Ultimately, Burning Spear offers a model for anyone pursuing a career rooted in values. His story demonstrates that success is possible without sacrificing integrity, and that cultural and spiritual responsibility can coexist with artistic achievement. He showed that meaningful music requires courage, discipline, and a willingness to stand up for what is right, even when that stance creates tension or controversy. Reflecting on these lessons, it becomes evident why Burning Spear's critiques of the reggae industry and fellow artists are relevant. They are not just complaints, they are teaching moments, grounded in decades of observation and experience. They remind us that the path of an artist is often about more than personal gain. It is about stewardship, legacy, and the power to influence culture responsibly. As we consider Burning Spear's career in its entirety, the story that emerges is one of an artist deeply committed to purpose. From early struggles to international acclaim, from behind-the-scenes conflicts to spiritual triumphs, his journey provides insight into the demands of maintaining authenticity in a demanding world. Burning Spear's reflections are not just about the past. They are guidance for the present and inspiration for the future. That wraps up our look at Burning Spear's incredible journey. From humble beginnings in St. Ann's Bay to becoming a global ambassador for roots reggae, his story is one of integrity, resilience, and unwavering commitment to message-driven music. Along the way, he faced conflicts, stood by his principles, and influenced generations of artists and fans. Whether you're a longtime reggae fan or just discovering his music, Burning Spear's legacy reminds us that staying true to your values can create art that resonates for decades. Thanks for watching, and keep the rhythm alive.